Hello, everyone. I'm Vanessa Vance. I'm a 25th year teacher for LAUSD and a mother to a beautiful little girl. I am very grateful that I stood my ground and didn't take the Fauci ouchie. Only about 1% of the thousands of LAUSD employees declined this experimental vaccine. In the fall of 2021, 2 months into the new school year, when the mandate took effect, I, in pouring tears, had to say goodbye to over 200 of my health and psychology high school students. I was segregated to work from home for the district's online learning program. Unfortunately, the majority of unvaxxed LAUSD employees lost their jobs completely. In January of 2021, in the middle of the lockdown, I heard Buettner, the previous superintendent of LAUSD, all over the media, saying that no teacher or student would be able to return to campus until they were fully vaccinated for COVID. I was outraged because, you see, I had been researching the dangers of vaccines for over 10 years at that point. So I just knew in my gut how sinister this plan was. I thought to myself, our union, UTLA, has to do something about this to protect us. Unfortunately, they were in on it. And I'm no longer a union member, by the way. I spent hours on UTLA's private Facebook group trying to convince teachers that this was an experimental vaccine and that the safe and effective slogan was a pure lie. Of course, my opinion wasn't very popular. But the beautiful thing is that I was able to find teachers who had similar views to mine. I private messaged many teachers, letting them know I was organizing a coalition of LAUSD teachers and staff who opposed the mandate. We had our first Zoom meeting on Valentine's Day 2021. We named ourselves California Educators for Medical Freedom, CAEMF, and since then, for the past 3 years, we've held weekly Sunday night meetings. Within that first week of forming CAEMF, I reached out to Michael Kane of New York Teachers for Choice for advice. And soon after that, he put me in touch with this bold, wickedly intelligent freedom fighter named Leslie Manookian, president and founder of Health Freedom Defense Fund and writer and producer of The Greater Good, an outstanding award-winning vaccine documentary from 2011, which very coincidentally has been in my treasured personal DVD collection since then. In my first phone conversation with Leslie, she told me that she had organized the most brilliant legal team and wanted to file a suit against LAUSD's vaccine mandate. She expressed her vision for this lawsuit, that it was going to be a landmark case, the kind you read about in textbooks, that would help millions of Americans for generations to come. Leslie Manookian is a mover and a shaker and a history maker. She's a hero of mine, and words can't express the gratitude that I and all of the members of CAEMF have for her courageous vision and the monumental help she's given us over the past several years. We are so thankful that Leslie has flown in from out of state to speak to us tonight. I am so honored to introduce this champion fighter against corruption and destruction. Please, let's put our hands together for the one and only Leslie Manookian.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. And I hope you, actually, what I really want to say is, would you all please stand up for a moment? I want you to give yourselves a round of applause, because we couldn't do this if it weren't for your courage and your tenacity. Seriously. to every single one of you who stood up and resisted this tyranny. My hat goes off to you, and my heart. You live in my heart. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Vanessa. Hopefully I'll pull it together in a second. I am, so unbelievably fortunate because I get to do something that is meaningful every day, which is to help other people to stand up for themselves. And I can't think of a greater gift from God, seriously. I want to go back and first of all, I want to unpack for you what happened 8 days ago, but I need to give a little bit of context first. So Vanessa reached out to me. She reached out to Michael Caine, and Michael Caine suggested that she reach out to me. And she told me what was going on, and we said, listen, let's do this. And so we originally filed, I think it was around March 18th or 19th, 20th of 2021, challenging the LAUSD mandate of the emergency use authorized shot. So it was EUA at that point, which is illegal, clearly illegal. It's very clear in the Federal Code of Regulations that emergency use authorized products are to carry with them the right to accept or refuse. Very clear. The Office of Legal Counsel at the Department of Justice tried to skew public opinion and the court's opinions of that about a week before our case was heard in July of 2021, but we didn't let that deter us. They literally came out and said, you're supposed to be apprised of the consequences of not taking it, meaning that could mean you lose your job. It was clear that what Congress meant was that you had to be apprised of the risks and benefits of actually taking the countermeasure, the medical countermeasure in question. But they tried to distort it. So we filed the lawsuit, and the following day, LAUSD said, it wasn't really a mandate. We didn't really mean that. You can test instead. It was just a, recommendation, a suggestion. So that case, I know, it's hilarious. The case worked its way through the court, and as Vanessa pointed out, Buettner had been saying since January, he was all over the media saying, we're gonna mandate this for everybody, you're not coming back. It was very, very clear. The case worked its way through the court. In July of 2021, the 27th, we had our hearing, and the district court dismissed the case as moot because there was no longer a mandate. And so the district court judge said, the case is now moot. There's no longer a ripe issue to address. I'm going to dismiss the case without prejudice, which means that plaintiffs can refile if this comes up. 17 days later, LAUSD implemented a mandate. Okay? We found out in our second lawsuit that they had been planning the mandate in early July of 2021. They misled the court. And this fact, I believe, plays into what happened 8 days ago. So we met with all of the teachers and all the leaders of California educators, and over the coming months, we decided that we were going to file a new lawsuit. But this lawsuit was going to be different. We weren't going to just challenge the EUA. We wanted to challenge the constitutionality of mandating a medical intervention, in particular one that does not stop transmission or infection. What is the justification for doing so? And as I said to all of them at the beginning, this has the potential to be historic. It's a landmark case. And boy, we were right. We were right. So we filed again in November of 2021, and we argued that the shots don't stop transmission or infection, and as such, Jacobson, the lawsuit, Supreme Court case from 1905, does not apply to this. Rather, more recent jurisprudence from the Supreme Court, which has very clearly determined that you and everyone has a right to bodily autonomy, the right to refuse unwanted medical interventions, even if they might save your life, that case does not apply. That's what we argued, okay? We said that natural immunity is superior, and natural immunity must be acknowledged by the courts. Up until this point, natural immunity is not even acknowledged in the courts. We acknowledged that we argued that Jacobson is antiquated because it is antique. It's literally a relic from the past, back when women couldn't vote. Seriously, in 1905, we couldn't vote, not till 1920. Jim Crow laws were in place. And the Supreme Court ruled in this same era that it was acceptable for them to determine who was capable of, or who was suitable for having children. They actually ruled in Buck v. Bell in the early part of the 20th century that it is acceptable for them to determine that a young woman was too unintelligent to have children and therefore she should be sterilized. This is the era that Jacobson comes from and which is dictating for 119 years vaccination policy in this country. Wow. It is my belief that Jacobson needs to be consigned to the dustbin of history where it belongs. And our lawsuit is the first step in that direction. It is the first chink in the armor of Jacobson, and it is indeed historic. So we filed and we made all these arguments. We said Jacobson must be updated to reconcile with all of this more recent jurisprudence, and the case started working its way through the courts. And in September of in July of 2022, we started doing depositions. We started, all of the plaintiffs, the individual plaintiffs were deposed, and we deposed Ileana Davalos of the Los Angeles Unified School District's Human Resources Department, and I believe another person or two. Ileana Davalos told our attorney in deposition under oath that she had been instructed to draft a mandate in early July of 2021 at the same time that they were representing to the court that they did not have a mandate, were not intending to draft a mandate, and that any suggestions otherwise were pure speculation. So we keep working our way through the court, and the court again dismisses our case. Every case so far that has challenged Jacobson has been dismissed. But we very narrowly argued that Jacobson doesn't apply because COVID shots don't stop transmission or infection. And so when we read the ruling from the district court, we thought, this is wrong. The court got this wrong. The court is, at the district level, is required to construe all of your allegations as a plaintiff in the most favorable light for you, to interpret them as true at that stage. And that's not what the court did. So we went to oral argument. Well, we said we're going to appeal, and we filed our notice of appeal, I believe it was September of 2022, later in September of 2022. And then we filed the actual appeal in January of 2023, and everybody knows, I'm sure, what happened in September, which is we went to oral argument in Seattle, in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the court heard oral argument, which can only be described as fireworks. It was one of the most unbelievable things I have ever witnessed in my entire life. So, we're there, and everyone's sitting in the gallery, and our attorney, John Howard, is conducting oral argument for us against Connie Michaels, some people call her a mean girl, and I think that's very appropriate. She has manipulated us, been dishonest with us. She has manipulated the court, and the court actually ruled that in the ruling, which I'll get to. But basically what happened in September of last year was that she got skewered in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. You have to think that she thought she was going to waltz in there and that it was just going to go her way and everything would be peachy, because she didn't have an answer for most of what the judges had to say. They actually said, your policy is irrational. They said, so someone who took 2 doses of the shot in March of 2021 is compliant, but a new employee getting hired today has to get 2 more shots. That's irrational. And she said, we just think the court needs to give the state the right to decide. That's what she repeated. When they asked, well, so the shot has to work, right? And she just said, we just think the court should give the state the right. And then they said, well, what about 20 years into the future? I mean, even 20 years? Yes. Yes, this is what she said over and over. She had nothing to say about it not stopping transmission or infection. She had nothing to come back about any of these points. And the judges were very, very harsh in their questioning of her. As she left the gallery, so basically the proceedings are concluded, and then our attorney, John Howard, and Connie Michaels go to exit what's called the bar and re-enter the gallery. There's like a little gate there, then they go back into the gallery where we're sitting. And Yvette and Rosalba and Eileen, they were all there. It was so wonderful to have them there, up there with us. Anyway, they walk out, and as the attorneys are walking out, Connie Michaels of the Los Angeles Unified School District looks at John Howard, our attorney, and says, "What are you going to do when they rescind the mandate?" This was probably one of the stupidest things an attorney could have ever done. Because, yes, thank you, God, she lost her cool in a big, bad way. And let me tell you, it came back to bite her on the proverbial. So that very day, that afternoon, the superintendent messages the school board and says, "We need to change the policy. Let's change the policy. Let's rescind the mandate." And 12 days later, they did just that for a second time. Second time they rescinded a mandate under pressure from our lawsuit. But the court didn't like that. So the court then, we actually notified the court and said, this is what LAUSD just did, just to make sure that they didn't miss it. And so the court ordered LAUSD to brief the court as to why mootness does not apply, why the case is not moot anymore, and then asked for our reply to that. Because generally speaking, if a policy is rescinded and there's no more threat that that policy could be re-implemented, then a case might be dismissed as moot. And the Supreme Court and other courts around the country have been, actually I don't know about the Supreme Court, I think I misspoke on that, but many courts, appellate courts around the country and lower courts have been dismissing cases up until that point as moot because the emergency had been rescinded by the Biden administration. So when Biden signed the order ending the emergency on May 11th of 2023, all of the cases almost that were working through the court system were dismissed as moot, except for ours. So the school district rescinds, and then there are a few more briefings and things, and then we submit our briefs on mootness and why this court is being manipulated by the Los Angeles Unified School District, and then we wait. And we wait, and I mean, I'm so sorry to all of you people. I would get texts and I would get emails, any word. We waited for 10 months almost. And then we finally got the ruling, which was so consistent with the line of questioning that we saw at the Ninth Circuit in September of last year. It was jaw-dropping. And just so that I don't butcher it, I actually want to read you a couple of the quotes because they are just priceless. Essentially, what the court found was that Jacobson, this is what the court ruled, and this is the most important thing, and this is why it's historic. The court ruled that Jacobson does not apply when a medical product is only for the benefit of the person, the individual, the recipient. That has never been said in a court in the United States, and it effectively narrowed Jacobson to only something that stops the spread. I know it's not all the way. I know we haven't won the whole thing yet, but you guys, this is a huge first step, and it is now controlling law in the entire Ninth Circuit. So think about all the vaccines that don't stop transmission. There are many of them. Many of them. Think about masks. Who are they for? Tests? So we've had all this jurisprudence for decades saying that the government does not have a right to violate your fundamental right to liberty, which is bodily autonomy. And now we've had the Ninth Circuit say, absolutely, that is correct. There is no state interest when it only affects you. It's the first step. We are not done. We are going to continue. So the court also rebuked the school district. It actually said, litigants who have already demonstrated their willingness to tactically manipulate the federal courts in this way should not, in italics, be given any benefit of the doubt. LAUSD appears to have twice sought to manipulate the federal courts to avoid an adverse ruling on this issue. Okay. The district court thus erred in holding that Jacobson extends beyond its public health rationale. Government's power to mandate prophylactic measures aimed at preventing the recipient from spreading disease to others, to also govern forced medical treatment for the recipient's benefit, is not American. Then they also talked about, which I thought was hilarious, they actually cited some of the comments from the board meeting when Jackie Goldberg said, she said, I have a foot in the camp of Dr. McKenna. I do not regret imposing the mandate for one moment, not 30 seconds, not one tiny bit, and I'm voting this way reluctantly, meaning she wanted to keep it going, even though we had known for 2 years that the shots don't stop transmission or infection. There's much more. What's really important to understand is that this fight is going to continue. But we now have something in place that's very, very important and we can all hang our hat on. We don't know what LAUSD will do. They may file what's called a petition for an en banc review. They have until this coming Friday to do so. What that means is they're asking a broader, there are 29 judges in the Ninth Circuit, 29 active judges, and they would have to petition and get 15 of those 29 judges to agree to have what's called an en banc review, which is a panel of 9 judges, not just the 3 that we got. So you draw judges, it's just random. You don't have any say over what judges you get. And the great thing about our case, people say to me all the time, oh, you know, it's kind of shocking that they did this in the Ninth Circuit. It's incredible. What an amazing win. How did this happen? It's actually the best circuit in the nation in many ways, because the jurisprudence in the Ninth Circuit is so powerful on privacy and bodily autonomy because they want unfettered access to abortion. So now, how do they actually argue to themselves, it's only for abortion? They are it will be very interesting. And if you recall, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, there was a very, very narrow interpretation of it. It said it's states' rights, but also, I actually am forgetting what the exact line of reasoning is, so I'm going to leave that. But the point is that the Ninth Circuit is in a very interesting position now because of what they have been trying to do for many, many years. California, in particular, as a state, has the most robust privacy protection. The Ninth Circuit has very, very strong privacy protection as well, and much case law supporting this. So now they're going to be in a little bit of a conundrum. So LAUSD can appeal or petition, it's called, for an en banc review. They would then draw 9 more judges, and they would review the decision. They can appeal to the Supreme Court, which I think would be very, very risky at this point, given what the Supreme Court has been ruling on matters of religion in the last year. There was that phenomenal ruling last year, the postal worker, and I'm now forgetting his name, Groff v. It was the Groff case, and it was challenging whether or not he could be forced to work on Sundays in violation of his faith, and they said, absolutely not. There have been several cases like that in the last year. There's another really important case, Lupo, that's in front of the Supreme Court, and this case has such huge potential for us. There's something called the Chevron Doctrine, and the Chevron Doctrine is the lawsuit under which deference is given to state and government agencies. So basically, if there's ever a conflict and a government agency has said, oh, you know, this is the policy, the courts are instructed from the Chevron case to defer to the government agency because it is accepted that they are acting in good faith and they know the most and that they are the experts. Chevron, or Lupo could overturn Chevron, which would be huge. It's just another huge step in the direction of government accountability and our ability to push back when governments overstep, when these state actors overstep their authority. So it's gigantic. As I said, it's not over yet, but we have made a huge, it has always been my hope that it would be historic, that it would be a landmark case. We are there. Now, if they don't petition the court, we go back to the district court. We go back to the district court and we get to prove our case in court. We get to depose them all, we get to do discovery and see what they were saying, and we get to expose what they were doing in a court of law, which would be wonderful too. So we have actually put this case has already cost $500,000. It's not cheap. I know it's not, but you know what? We're doing it and we're doing it together. And I hope that anybody who is here and anybody who is watching this stands with us and does what they can. If it's $5, $50, or $50,000, please help us to keep fighting, because we are fighting for every single American to have the God-given right to decide what they put into their body.